Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'll be splitting my time with the member from Simcoe North. Madam Speaker, we are talking about an affordability crisis here in the House today, and I'm very confident that I am not the only member in this House that is getting dozens and dozens of calls and emails every single day from their constituents who are very concerned about their ability to put food on the table, put fuel in their cars, to be able to afford to heat their homes, and be able to put their kids in the activities that they enjoy the most. What we are talking about here in our Opposition Day motion is reducing taxes to make life more affordable for Canadians by eliminating the GST on fuel and the carbon tax. What I'm hearing is somewhat unbelievable, where the argument from the Liberals and the NDP that somehow eliminating a point of sale tax does not put more money in the pockets of Canadians. I'm not sure how one could even argue that. In fact, their argument to that is that the retailers are going to collude to ensure that those savings aren't passed on to Canadians. Well, I can tell you from experience in Alberta, where the provincial government has removed the provincial sales tax on fuel. In Alberta, our fuel is about 20 cents cheaper than anywhere else in Canada. So Albertans are benefiting from a government who has seen the difficulties that Canadians are facing and has taken action to address it and have passed those savings right directly to Canadians. But what I'm hearing from my constituents after 2 years of a pandemic is they are exhausted, they are tired, they want to get life back to normal. And when they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, where the pandemic is all but over and businesses are getting back open, they see this affordability crisis where fuel prices are exorbitant, grocery prices are going up, housing prices are going up, and a lot of this has to fall at the feet of the Liberal government. Now, I know they like to say this is a global issue, that the war in Ukraine with Putin is causing the prices to increase. Well, I've been in this House pretty much every day. I don't recall ever Vladimir Putin sitting across the way and voting in favor of a carbon tax. I don't recall Vladimir Putin putting forward legislation or a bill to increase the carbon tax on April 1st. Maybe I missed that, but I'm not sure if my colleagues around the table or around this House can confirm that Vladimir Putin is the reason that we have a carbon tax that went up 25% on April 1st, despite an affordability crisis around the world and a war in Ukraine. So I'm not sure how we put this all at the feet of Vladimir Putin. And instead of this government offering relief to Canadians when they need it most, the Prime Minister is going around, traveling around the world, no mask in sight. But here at home, is he punishing Canadians over and over again with his draconian mandates and travel restrictions that aren't in place in anywhere else around the world. But that really seems to be the MO of this Liberal government. We're going to punish Canadians at home and do something completely different around the world. And a good example of that is with the fertilizer tariff. Now, my colleague across the way doesn't seem to think that this is a problem, that this is a way of punishing Russia. Well, I would invite my Liberal colleagues to go and talk to any farmer, especially in Eastern Canada, and ask them if the fertilizer is hurting Vladimir Putin. The only people that this fertilizer tariff of 35%, the only people this is punishing are Canadian farmers. Vladimir Putin, once again, is not paying this tariff. Canadian farmers are paying this tariff. And even before the war in Ukraine, fertilizer prices in many parts of the country were more than doubled what they were the year before. As a result, in many cases, because of the carbon tax. Because you know what makes fertilizer, Madam Speaker? Natural gas. Carbon tax is being put on natural gas, which causes those prices to increase. But Canadian farmers are being punished, and we've offered solutions. We've asked the Liberal government to provide an exemption to those fertilizers purchased before March 2nd, before Russia invaded Ukraine. The Liberals said no. So we asked them, would they offer compensation to those farmers who've had to pay that exorbitant price for that tariff? Again, the Liberals have said no. But let me put this in perspective, Madam Speaker. Canada is the only G7 country that is putting a tariff on fertilizer, on Russian fertilizer, meaning that Canadian farmers are now at a severe competitive disadvantage to our compatriots around the world. They are paying an exorbitantly high carbon tax, and they are paying a tariff on fertilizer. And at the same time, we're in the midst of a global food crisis, where food insecurity is probably the #1 priority on earth. And we are the only country the only country on earth that is increasing taxes and putting a tariff on fertilizer. How does that make us competitive? How does that give us the ability to carry the burden of helping in a global food crisis, which our farmers absolutely want to do? They want to be there to help. But this Liberal government is doing everything possible to ensure that we can't do that we don't meet our potential. So despite us offering these solutions, the Liberals carry on with this activist agenda, let's say, or this theatrics that they're putting on, that this is somehow punishing Putin when it's only punishing Canadian farmers. But it's not just Canadian farmers that are going to feel the impact of this. If Canadian farmers are having to reduce their fertilizer use simply because they can't afford it, yields are going to go down, the prices of those commodities are going to go up. We've already seen the price of groceries go up, in many cases up 15%, depending on what that product is. This is only going to get worse. So we're not only talking about countries that have been relying on Ukrainian commodities like barley and wheat and sunflower oil. This is going to be felt here at home. And my NDP colleagues have been talking about food insecurity right here at home in Canada. Well, a lot of that is a result of what the Liberal policies are. They are the ones that are increasing the cost of those groceries by increasing the carbon tax, putting a tariff on fertilizer. Additional red tape making it very difficult for our farmers to do the jobs that they do best, and they do better than anyone else in the world. We're the only country where the government, in a food security crisis, is asking Canadians, or their consumers, to pay more. The only government that's asking their farmers to pay more. How does this make any sense whatsoever? And I want to get to the part of our opposition day motion. We talked about fertilizer, but I also want to talk about the carbon tax. The carbon tax is something, again, where we've offered a solution. We've offered a private member's bill by my colleague from Bruce Gray, or here on Bruce, that is will eliminate the carbon tax from farm fuels. Bill C-234. The Parliamentary Budget Officer, in assessing the carbon tax, has said a few things which I think were very enlightening. The carbon tax is not revenue neutral. The carbon tax increases inflation. And the carbon tax does not reduce emissions. So everything that the Liberals are saying that the carbon tax will accomplish, the study by the Parliamentary Budget Officer has refuted all of those claims. So why are we charging this carbon tax, if anybody, on our Canadian farmers? So we have put forward a solution in Bill C-234 to eliminate the carbon tax from farm fuels. And the Canadian Federation of Independent Business has done the math. In the first year of the carbon tax, Canadian farmers paid on average about $14,000 a year for the carbon tax. And this increased on April 1st, that goes to $45,000 per average farmer. Now the Liberals are going to say, well, we have a carbon tax rebate and 8 out of 10 families make more off the carbon tax. Again, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, an arm's length officer of this House, has said again that is not the case. In C8, the carbon tax rebate for farmers get $1.70 for every $1,000 of eligible expenses. They are getting pennies on the dollar and what they're contributing to the carbon tax. Farmers are price takers. They can't afford to carry that burden of that carbon tax. When again, we're asking them to improve yields and improve their efficiency. It doesn't make sense. Madam Speaker, in a time when we are talking about global food security, we also need to talk about affordability. And our farmers and our producers and our manufacturers need to be able to do what they do and do it efficiently. Now, I've talked about the carbon tax and I've talked about fertilizer price, but there's another issue where the Liberals continue to throw on red tape and obstacles. And another one is now going to be coming out in the next little while, is the front of pack labeling, which is a direct attack on beef and pork producers in Canada. And the United States has already identified this as a trade irritant, which will impact our beef exports. But again, will increase grocery costs here at home, making things even much more unaffordable for Canadians. So in conclusion, Madam Speaker, I think our motion is very prudent. It ensures that we can address the affordability crisis facing Canadians, but most importantly, our farmers and our producers and our ranchers who are doing all they can to address a global food security crisis and ensure that our groceries are affordable for all Canadians. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.